Hello, folks. And let's see, do we have, let's let them in.
Let my people in.
All right. Look at this group.
Hello.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, everyone.
All right.
Hi, everybody.
Great to see everyone. And we are going to share a little fun tune with you all. So I'm going to do that now. Let's see. Here we go. And let's do it.
There once was a time in Egypt land, the Jews were slaves in the desert sand. We cried out for an outstretched hand, oh let my people go.
Soon may our freedom come to bring us liberty, peace and fun. One day when the Pharaoh's outdone, he'll let my people go.
Brave Moses with his shepherd's rod had heard the mighty voice of God. It said, tell Pharaoh clear and strong to let my people go.
Soon may our freedom come to bring us liberty, peace and fun. One day when the Pharaoh's outdone, he'll let my people go. Oh, what shall we do with the middle matzah? What shall we do with the middle matzah? What shall we do with the middle matzah? Early in the Seder. Hide it away, it's the Afikoman. Hide it away, it's the Afikoman. Hide it away, it's the Afikoman. Early in the Seder. Oy vey, let's get some prizes. Oy vey, let's get some prizes. Oy vey, let's get some prizes later in the Seder. Soon may our freedom come to bring us liberty, peace and fun. One day when the Pharaoh's outdone, he'll let my people go.
Now Pharaoh's heart was not appeased, no Hebrew slave shall ever go free. But Moses said, let's wait and see, the plagues began to grow.
Boy, soon may our freedom come to bring us liberty, peace and fun. One day when the Pharaoh's outdone, he'll let my
chat is open, so we encourage people to chat their location and why they're excited to join us.
The tale of how we left Egypt. God split the sea and we walked across with no need for a ship.
But first, before we get to that, there's sons and questions for. Just when you think it's almost done, there's 3 hours more.
There's 3 hours more. For Pharaoh sent men after us, their lives would soon be lost. And we spill wine drops from our cups, cause freedom had a cost. Cause freedom had a cost.
So every year we celebrate our freedom with a smile.
With Moses and Ramses too. Yocheved the Levi, the Pharaoh's daughter, and Aaron and Miriam on the Egyptian Nile. Hey lads, the Seder has come with questions asked by the youngest one. We'll sing and have some fun for wonders long ago.
Egyptian firstborn sons were lost, the sea of reeds we firmly crossed. They followed but 'twas at great cost,
They all were dragged below. Hey lads, the Seder is done. We told our tale of redemption. The Shana Haba B'Yerushalayim. The Shana Haba B'Yerushalayim.
All right. Well, welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. It is great to see this amazing crowd here. And I'm just really excited. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Randy, and I do a lot of roles with Braver Angels, supporting our operations, moderating workshops, and plenty of other stuff. And this event is really special for me, since it's a continuation of a tradition that I've followed for about 15 years now. So when I lived in Michigan, I started inviting all of my friends to an annual Seder to share one of my favorite aspects of the Jewish culture that I came from. And I shared the food, like my mom's amazing matzo ball soup recipe, and matzah and charoset, and even got them to try gefilte fish. Well, some of them. So, and I also shared the wine, right? The delicious Manischewitz. I actually have some right here. Let me grab the bottle. It's a big bottle. And yeah, we basically taste like grape juice. So hopefully everyone has some. And hopefully you all, some of you grabbed some stuff from our shopping list and whipped up a delicious Seder meal and can follow along with that glass of wine. So let's see. Sorry, I'm a little lost in my remarks. So anyway, but in my original Seders, I also share the important lessons from the story of Exodus, which resonated with me, even though my connection to the Jewish religion wasn't particularly strong. While I lived a secular life, in recent years, I've gained a new appreciation for the beautiful philosophical ideas that form the basis for many of the world's religious traditions. And I think that it's so important that we share them with each other and discuss how they might apply to our lives, even today. So last year, when we realized that we wouldn't be able to be doing in-person Seders with all of our friends, I decided that one of my Zoom Seders would bring together my Braver Angels friends. And even though we said next year in person, well, here we are again for the second annual Braver Seder over Zoom. But I am grateful to be able to do this, to see friends from across the country. And my parents are here, joining from the opposite coast. Wow. So I'm grateful for all the people who came together to help make this happen, and to our special guests who decided to join us. And speaking of, I want to turn it over to our MC for the evening, Micah Hendler, who is one of the leaders of our music committee, and the founder and director of the Jerusalem Youth Chorus, and quite a talented musician himself. And he is going to be introducing our first special guest. So, Micah?
Thank you so much, Randy. Really excited to be here with everyone. Really grateful to have gotten to scheme with you a little bit to figure out how we could really create something special here tonight. I know that that you are all coming from all over the country, perhaps even other places. And we do have some special guests, and they also may be having some technical difficulties at the moment. So they will come to join us when they are on, but it'll be worth it. So definitely stick around. What I think might be great now would be to turn things over to Ruth Ashkenazi, who's the Red co-chair of the Silicon Valley Braver Angels Alliance. And she can help us set the scene for the Seder itself. So like, what is actually on the table? What are we looking at here, Ruth?
Thank you,
like
Micah.
a newscaster.
Thank you, Randy. Thanks to everybody who's here. Chag Sameach, happy holiday. I want to start with everybody, just close your eyes for a second. Imagine we're all at a table sitting together in the same room, and the table is set with a few special things for the Passover holiday. We have our Seder plate full of items that I'll discuss in a moment. We have a stack of 3 matzot, that's plural for matzah. We have a little cup of salt water. We have a cup of wine for Elijah, a cup of water for Miriam, that's Moses' sister. And everybody, pretend you have a pillow so you can sit back and relax. We are free people, and on Passover, we are supposed to appreciate it and relax. You don't have to sit up straight and at attention. So the Seder plate is probably the most recognized symbol of the Passover Seder. We have a little picture to share. As you can see, it's colorful, but it doesn't have to be. There are many, many different types of Seder plates. I'm going to start by explaining what the shank bone is doing on our Seder plate. In Hebrew, it's called zroah, and it represents sacrifices made by the Jewish people, traditional sacrifices. We're going to move on to what looks like lettuce there, and is in fact lettuce or a bitter herb, chazeret. Chazeret is bitter because slavery is bitter. So chazeret represents the bitterness of slavery. we move on to another representation of the bitterness of slavery, and that's maror. Maror reminds us that slavery is an evil and that freedom is precious. Charoset is the best tasting thing on the plate, Seder plate, according to me. It's made one of two ways. It can be made with apples and honey, nuts, and wine. Or if you're a Sephardic Jew, you can make it with dates and raisins and nuts. The common ingredient is wine. Next, we have our hard-boiled egg, bitzah. The hard-boiled egg, the bitzah, represents springtime and renewal. And some say it's also representative of sacrifice like the shank bone. Then we get to karpas. Karpas is generally represented with a bit of parsley. That brings us to our little glass of salt water. During the Seder, we dip our parsley into the salt water and we eat it. And it reminds us of the tears of the Jews who were enslaved under Pharaoh in Egypt. We also want to go back to our 3 matzot. We'll be discussing this in a bit, but basically we have the top, the middle, and the bottom. All right, moving on to Elijah's cup of wine. During our Passover Seder, we pour 4 glasses of wine that we drink, and we pour a 5th for the prophet Elijah. We don't touch it, we don't drink it. We put it outside our front door, and we wait for the prophet to come and drink it. We check it at the end of our Seder to see if it's been touched. And if it hasn't, we pour it back into the bottle, hoping that next year, in the Shana Abba, next year, Elijah will come and tell us that the Messiah is on its way to bring peace and spiritual bliss to all of us. We also have that cup of water, the cup from Miriam, and it's a relatively new tradition. The inclusion of it reminds us of a very important role that women have played, not only in the story of Exodus, but throughout Jewish tradition. So you can open your eyes now. And Mike, I'll hand it back to you.
Ruth, thank you for that beautiful setting. And now our technical difficulties have been resolved, and I'm extremely excited to welcome our special guest here, Peter Yarrow, who will be joining us from wherever you are right now, Peter, for some musical inspiration and some different directions that the Passover story has inspired musically in the many, many traditions that we all celebrate. So Peter, take it away.
Oh, I'm thrilled to be with you. And I'm recalling now, I don't know if we have Theo Bickel's widow is a very, very dear friend. Theo Bickel was like the pxhere of Jewish music, and he was one of my mentors. And we used to have, in the civil rights movement, for example, we had Theo Bickel, Judy Collins, Allard Lowenstein, who was an extraordinary organizer and activist, and there's Amy, and Amy Kinsberg Bickel. And then we would sit around, and first we would do the rituals of the Seder, and then we would talk about what that meant today. And what it meant today was not theoretical. What it meant today was that being Jewish meant that when we were slaves, historically, we Jews, that we had an obligation to identify with and be there for all human beings that were being subjected to the to commensurate kinds of oppression, or any kinds of oppression, and that was the essence of the holiday. It started out first making the analogies, and then it was really a report back from the front, so to speak, as to what was happening on the front lines of the civil rights movement, and that continued into the anti-war movement during the Vietnam War. And the passion of that made the Seder, for one thing, obvious. Judy Collins was never a good Jew, and she wasn't a Jew, but she was Jewish in this way with all her heart. And so today echoes back for me. Now I have to tell you all, we're on something that I will announce in the next couple of days, just because you may have wondered why I've maintained radio silence for a while. I'm taking chemotherapy, which is really not as good as a cosmopolitan, but it'll do. And I don't want to talk about the particulars of my situation, but I promise you that if everything goes as planned, if this raid goes well, I will beat this thing, and I will be rid of the container for this very aggressive tuner, and it will be gone, and I won't have to negotiate with it in the rest of my life. So you can tell by my optimism, my humor, that first of all, this is the first I've shared it outside the family, but I consider Braver Angels, particularly this group, and Nika and Alma and all of you folks, to be my extended family in the truest sense. So having said that, let us continue with the Seder. And when the time comes, I'm going to sing you one or two songs that will do precisely what we used to do when I was doing it with Theo and with Judy Collins and Ali Lowenstein and our other activist friends.
Thank you so much, Peter. Really grateful that you have chosen to be with us, particularly in such a difficult time, and we're sending you a refuah shlema, all of the healing in every way. And I think we can all take a page out of your resilience and good humor. Very inspired by that. I want to move to a bit of another sort of setting of the stage, but not so much in physical space, but in time. The Seder, the word Seder literally means order. And I think it's very interesting that this sort of tension or relationship between freedom and order, the idea that in the Festival of Freedom, we have an extremely strict order of exactly what we're supposed to do every year in exactly the same way. To feel free. I think that's sort of a very interesting food for thought. Tonight, we will be taking some more liberties than a traditional Seder would for a whole variety of reasons. But I want to just sort of set the stage by actually reciting the traditional Seder in Hebrew, the actual order of what we would be doing. And then we can pick and choose what we have time for in about half a length of a normal Seder that we have together. So, Randy, do you have a slide or something so people can follow along? If not, that's okay.
Perhaps not. Sorry about that.
All good. So I'll sing it through in Hebrew, and then we'll talk about just briefly what the different stages are. So, Kadesh urchatz karpas yachatz magid rachza motzi matzah maror korech shulchan orech Tzafun barech halel nirtzah. So that's sort of the sung version of the table of contents, if you will. And Kadesh, I'm now sort of improvising this here, but Kadesh is basically the sanctifying of the wine, or Chatz is one of the hand washings, Karpas is the dipping of the parsley in salt water, Yachatz, Ruth will guide us through, is the breaking of the middle matzah and what that signifies. Magid is the very long telling of the story, which we'll do in an interesting and different way tonight. Rachza is the second hand washing. Motzi matzah is actually taking out the matzah. Maror is focusing on the bitterness of the horseradish or the maror and of slavery. Korech is the Hillel sandwich, and then Shulchan Orech is we eat, and then Safun and Barech, Hallel, and Nirtza are all closing songs and praises and more drinking. How's that? And so that's our table of contents in brief. One of the things that I think is just really interesting about it is this tradition and this idea again that these are traditions that have persevered through time and many different difficult circumstances. And so, Peter, do you have a song that might lend a little bit of perspective to that? Leading question.
I just realized I was out of tune. Can somebody else go while I tune up, please?
No problem, Peter. We'll continue. I'd love to introduce the pastor of the First Baptist Church of Stillwell, Kansas, the Reverend Franklin Ruff, to offer a toast over the first glass of wine. One of the things that's going to be really interesting about our Seder tonight is it's also an interfaith event, and there are many different interpretations and many different ways that this experience has inspired many people of different faiths. And so we're excited that Reverend Ruff will be joining us to make a toast over the first glass of wine of 4. But we're only going to be doing 2 tonight because, again, it's condensed, but feel free to drink at your own pace. Reverend Ruff is also the regional coordinator for Braver Angels West North Central region. And if you're going to try to keep up, again, this is one of 4 glasses that we're going to start on. Reverend Ruff.
Thank you. As I look at the connection of Seder to my faith and to my person and to my involvement with Braver Angels, there are many connections. We, of course, who are members of the Christian community, must realize that there is no us if there was no Passover. There is no us if there was no reason for the Seder. And we recognize that, and we honor that, and we respect that. As a Black man, you might not have noticed that, but I'll tell you that that is the case. There are obvious connections that we can lean on. We, as a culture and as a people, understand the bitterness of slavery. We understand the harshness of what it means to be enslaved to another. And so we honor and look at that connection as well. And as a Braver Angel, I would just say that we must understand that polarization is enslavement. And so as we take the time for this Seder, I would say let's bask in the freedom that comes from what we do on a daily basis as Braver Angels. Let's bask in the freedom of being willing to sit down and listen to others who are different faiths, cultures and different ethnicities, because that we will truly find our freedom. With that, glasses and a toast to unity, freedom.
Amen, Reverend. Thank you so much. I'll just say the traditional blessing, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei pri hagafen. And we can drink our first glass of wine. Peter, how's your guitar doing?
All right, I'm good to go. And this is a song we would always sing. And it harks back to this alliance that was so powerful between Jews and Black people of in the civil rights movement. The word Negro was used, and it's in the song, one of these two songs. And there was a sense, you know, when there was a Seder that we were saying being Jewish means helping, coming to each other's aid, and the to finally address, as we did, the reality of the residual existence of slavery was essential to us, and it burned in our hearts. And if you look at 1964 Mississippi Summer with SNCC, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, the leadership was white and Black, and a lot of the leadership, not all of it, but a lot, was Jewish. And this was celebrated at the March on Washington in a specific way when Rabbi Joachim Prinz, now that march in 1963 was the one where Peter, Paul, and Mary sang "The Fire and the Hammer and Blowing in the Wind," and the Joachim Prinz spoke about the sin of silence, that the failure to stand for those who are suffering is complicity, and it relates to our own moment now. And so this song, which was sung by Paul Robeson, and Mary is to grow up with Paul Robeson singing her, to sleep sometimes, because her parents were very left-wing. And so this would all be singing, this would be, and I'm singing lower than I should be in my own voice. It goes, when Israel was an Egypt land, let my people go. Oppressed so hard they could not stand, let my people go. Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt land, tell Pharaoh to let my people go.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you so much. All right. Ruth, would you like to take us into Yachatz?
I would. Peter, thank you. That was beautiful. Really beautiful. And I think it's a good transition to Yachatz. Yachatz is a word that comes from the Hebrew word chetzi, which means half. So we're going to turn our attention back to our stack of 3 matzot. And we recognize the lower matzah as representing the earth, the upper matzah as representing the heavens, and the middle matzah as representing us. We're going to break it in half, but matzah never breaks evenly. We're going to take the bigger half. This is called the Afikoman. The Afikoman is what you wrap up and you give to an adult to sneak away and hide from the children. Okay, we'll talk more about the Afikoman later on, but you can think of it as a little ploy to keep the kids awake through the Seder, to keep them behaving well, because they know they'll be searching for this at the end of the Seder. Okay, the smaller part is called the bread of affliction. And this is such a pivotal symbol in the Passover Seder. It basically has 2 significant parts of it. It calls for us to share our traditions, to share our Seder, especially with those less fortunate than we are. It also reminds us that our freedom comes with responsibilities. Like Peter said, we must not, in the face of injustice, stay silent. Each of us is incomplete, and we must be engaged in ways to search for ways of making the world a better place, not only for people we know, for people we don't know, for those still enslaved. The traditional prayer goes like this. Take a moment. This is the bread of affliction, which our ancestors ate in the land of Egypt. Let all who are hungry enter and eat. Let all who are needy enter to share our Passover. This year, we are here. Next year, in the land of Israel. This year, we are slaves. Next year, may we all be free. While Reverend Ruff was talking, I was just so moved at his reference to how polarization is a form of slavery. Reverend Ruff, thank you for saying that, because it stirred me really profoundly. We certainly are never completely free. And even when we feel as though we are, we know people who aren't. So we can always be part of helping them achieve more liberty. And that's what Passover is all about. So in sharing this bread of affliction, we keep those things in mind.
Thank you so much, Ruth. That was really beautifully said. And I agree 1,000% that with the way that Reverend Ruff put it, this idea that polarization itself is a form of slavery, where when we are not able to truly think with free and untethered and unfettered sort of mind about whatever is happening, but are drawn in different directions that may distort reality, we ourselves are experiencing a form of slavery in that sense. So thank you, Reverend, for that. Peter, would you like to share another song with us in brief? You're on mute, though.
I'm unmuting now. I do want to, and I was, and I thank you for the opportunity, because extending this whole idea, this song, this exercise in not being silent is also an exercise in leadership and courage, of denying this exercise in which we must deny the forces that would separate us and make us hate one another. This is not a passive kind of a task. And so it applies to Braver Angels in a very specific way, because there are people that they're so caught up in the cycle of fear and retribution and hatred that they don't see that, in the same way that people don't see that the victims of war are the soldiers who are called to sacrifice their lives, and then they have been coerced by the system. They've been forced, and so it is that there are people to whom we have to stretch our humanity, who are on all sides of all conflicts. For instance, in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, who are brought up to feel that an eye for an eye is the only way, rather than the path of forgiveness, which is ultimately means that you may despise the act, but you find your way to have empathy for human beings. And so that is part of this exercise. And this exercise takes the leadership of people like Moses. And Moses Fred Hellerman of the Weavers, who was an extraordinary writer. The Weavers included Fred Hellerman, let me see, Fred Hellerman, pxhere, and hang on, let me see, I'll get this, pxhere, Lee Hayes, who co-wrote If I Had a Hammer, and also Ronnie Gilbert, who was the quintessential Mary Travers before Mary Travers was Mary Travers, with her determination, her gutsiness, and her courage. So here is the song. I'm just okay. Hang on. I just want this. Okay. It's called Man Come Into Egypt. And at the gathering for Fred Hellerman, Noel Paul Stuckey and I, not Mary Travers, because Mary has passed for 10 years, sang this song. And it was on our second album called Man Come Into Egypt. And it's such a great song. And it is about celebrating a person who wants to drive away the darkness, as we must do in our own leadership roles, if we want to celebrate this perspective which dignifies us all. And so here it is. There is a man come into Egypt. Wait a second, I'm going to do it with a different implement. This is not a good implement. Here we go. There is a man coming to Egypt, and Moses is his name. When he saw the grief upon us, in his heart there burned a flame. In his heart there burned a flame, oh Lord. In his heart there burned a flame. When he saw the grief upon us, in his heart there burned a flame. There is a man coming to Egypt to light the soul of women and men. I had to change that. Like the sun, come up in Egypt, trying to drive. Wait. I've lost my lyric, my brilliant lyric that I had. Oh my goodness. It should give me 2 seconds. I'm a little vertutzt here. This is a term of art that we use to describe. Okay, here it is. And okay, there is a man coming to Egypt. His eyes are full of light, like the sun. Come up in Egypt, drive away the night. Come to drive away the night, oh Lord. Come to drive away the night. Like the sun, come up in Egypt. Come to drive away the night. There is a man coming to Egypt, has come for you and me. On his lips a word is singing, and that word is liberty. And the lips are liberty, oh Lord. On his lips said liberty. There is a man coming to Egypt to stir the souls of women and men. On his lips we will follow him to freedom and never wear those chains again. Never wear those chains again, oh Lord. Never wear those chains again. We will follow go into freedom, never wear those chains again.
Bravo. Thank you so much, Peter. Wow. And what a gift. What a gift. Thank you so much for sharing that with us today.
My pleasure. My pleasure. My honor.
It's all of ours. Yeah, so in a traditional Seder, I'm assuming that many of you growing up in your homes didn't have Peter Yarrow personally at your Seders, though sometimes maybe some of his songs at your Seders, but rarely a personal rendition. So this is fun for all of us. But usually there would be some sort of young child present in person who might do the 4 questions. And as I was thinking, Randy and I actually don't know whether Randy or I are the youngest, but I agreed to compromise and decide that for the sake of argument, I'm the youngest person here, which is strange for me. And so it looks like it's my job to sing the 4 questions. The 4 questions. And it's really actually one question with 4 different, somewhat rhetorical answers, but they sort of explains 4 different elements of the Seder. The first is sort of that we eat matzah, and the second is that we have maror, and the third is that we dip parsley twice, and the third is that we recline. So I will be just quickly singing these in the traditional I think it's kind of Aramaic, actually. These are in Aramaic. So Ma nishtana halayla ze mikol halelot shebechol halelot anu ochlin chametz umatzah chametz umatzah. And then everyone can repeat halayla ze kulo matzah, halayla ze kulo matzah, shebechol halelot anu ochlin she'ar yerakot halayla ze maror halayla ze maror shebechol halelot ein anu matbilin afilu pa'am echat halayla ze sheteife hamim halayla ze sheteife hamim shebechol halelot anu ochlin ben yoshvin uven mesubin halayla ze kulanu mesubin halayla ze kulanu mesubin. So I've done my job now as the youngest person at the Seder, and we'd now love to move to Leslie Lepedo, who will be talking about the 4 children. And Leslie's the Blue co-chair of the San Francisco Braver Angels Alliance and a member of the debates team who helps run many of those events. And she's helping run this one too. Thank you so much, Leslie.
Hi. Okay, I'm going to give the traditional sense of it first and then a bit of how I think about it now. The Torah commands us to teach our children about Passover. And the Talmud suggests 4 different ways children may react. What does the wise child ask? What is the meaning of the decrees, laws, and rules that the Eternal One, our God, has commanded us? You should explain to this child all the laws and customs of Pesach. What does the wicked child ask? What does this ritual mean to you? This is done because of what the Eternal One did for us when we went out of Egypt. If you had been in Egypt, you would not have been redeemed. What does the simple child ask? What is this? You shall say to that child, it was with a mighty hand that the Eternal One brought us out of Egyptian bondage. What about the child who does not know enough to ask? You shall explain to this child that we celebrate Passover to remember what God did for us when we were freed from slavery in Egypt. When I was a child, I sat through a lot of Seders that went on and on and on. And it was then that I developed my love for that little matzah, harosas, and horseradish sandwich out of starvation. But the story of the four children always threw me for a loop. More thoughtful and philosophical folk than I are going to tell you that the four children reside in each of us, and that's true. But I'll give you my little kid and my grown-up perspective. As a kid, I always thought the wise child sounded like the kind of kid who would suck up to the teacher and try to make everyone else look bad. The simple child, I didn't get that one at all. Was he or she stupid? Like, what did simple mean anyway? And they got the same exact explanation that everyone else seemed to get. The child who didn't know enough to ask, maybe too young, or maybe kind of out to lunch, or just couldn't talk, kind of sounded like that simple kid. But the wicked kid, he was a piece of work, and definitely a boy. He just stuck his tongue right out at all the grown-ups, and they were so mean to him. They told him he would have been left there. It reminded me of once asking in my Sunday school class in a truly curious way, what if I'm not sure I believe in God? And wow, the teacher was so mean to me. She told me if that was how I felt, I shouldn't be there. Way to inspire, teacher. Nowadays, I see things a bit differently. Well, the wise child still seems like the kid who would suck up to the teacher, but also one who might demand a deeper understanding and not take things at face value. The simple child, someone who's innocent and curious, not there to argue or demand, not stupid, but open and wanting to listen. The child who does not know enough to ask. I have been there in my life more times than I can count. In my medical career, in my personal life, in Braver Angels, not knowing enough even to know what the right question is. But still, it's that wicked child who saddens me the most. He doesn't sound wicked, he sounds excluded, left out, unheard. What does this mean to you? Because he's aware of his exclusion, he says you and not me. How many people now are wicked children? People who feel excluded, unheard, discriminated against. Do we condemn them to be left behind and not redeemed if they dare to ask why? Or maybe our job at Passover is to include them, to listen to why they see it the way they do, to make sure they are not condemned to being left behind. Hold those wicked children close to your hearts. That's what the four children mean to me now.
Beautifully said, Leslie. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that inspiration. Randy, back to you. Can you take us through the 10 plagues? I know this is another part of the Seder that has a lot of personal meaning to you that I think would be really beautiful to share.
Absolutely. Thanks very much. And so I hope everyone has their cup of wine or grape juice or alkalized water or whatever you're drinking us today. So there's a passage from the Haggadah that says, "These are the plagues that God brought upon the Egyptians in Egypt. We pour out a drop of wine from our cups as we say each one, because we cannot have full joy without when our happiness has come at the expense of the suffering of others." So I'm going to recite each of these plagues, and I'm going to dip my pinky in my glass like we did when I was growing up, and put a little drop on my plate for each one. So dam, which is blood; svardeya, frogs; kinim, lice; arov, which is wild beasts. On the screen, it's represented as insects. I've heard it said that they were hornets or wasps, or there's actually disagreement about this, and it's interestingly reflects some of the debates that rabbis have had in the past in the Talmud and the other commentary on the Torah. So it's, yeah, I think that's an interesting part of Judaism, and I thought I'd mention that. Dever, which is cattle disease, so it's killing all of their livestock. Shkin, boils. Barad, hail. Abre, locusts. Hoshech, darkness. And makat bakrot, death of the firstborn. And I like to think of this as the original version of pouring one out for the homies that went down. And for me, this is the essence of the spirit of Passover. It's a lesson that we see repeated, like when Moses parted the Red Sea for the Israelites to pass through, and then the pursuing Egyptian army was drowned when he brought it back together. The Talmud tells us that the Jews sang out of joy and relief, but when the angels were about to join in, God said, no, no, those were my children too. And for me also, this is the true spirit of Braver Angels. The idea that no matter how awful we believe someone else to be, in their thoughts, even in their actions, that our goal should never be their suffering. Perhaps their growth and redemption, but not their suffering. And even if that suffering is necessary to ease the pain of others, it should always diminish our own joy. And that actually brings us to our next activity, where we're going to get to think really deeply about these ideas together. So what we're going to do now is let you engage in a discussion about one of the 4 questions that we've come up with about Passover. So I'm going to take you through each of them, and you'll be able to choose your breakout room based on which question you want to discuss. So here they are. The first one is related to what I just spoke about. So the Seder focuses on the idea of not rejoicing in the suffering of one's enemies, even those who might have wanted to hurt or kill us. How can this be applied to our current political struggles? And is there a limit to this idea? And by the way, in these this breakout session, if you would rather just watch, or if you're having a tough time selecting a breakout room, or just want to stay in the main room, I'm actually going to be moderating a discussion of this question here in the main room. The second question is, the Haggadah tells us that each person should feel as though they themselves were a slave in Egypt, liberated from oppression. So when is a time when you stepped into someone else's shoes and gained new understanding or perspective on one of their challenges or struggles? The third one, freedom is a value that many of us hold dear, but it can be understood in many ways. Sometimes individual freedoms may come at the cost of collective freedoms, and vice versa. So what is a time that you felt free, and was there a cost either to a particular group or a type of individuals that others had to pay for your freedom? And the last question that we have is, the 4 children, when asking questions, are described as wise, wicked, simple, and the one who does not even know how to ask. And as Leslie mentioned, some suggest that these archetypes are actually elements of each of our personalities that can be brought out in different moments of questioning. So was there a time when you asked a question like the wicked child, or when you did not even know how to ask? And how can we use this framing to engage more responsively with others in tough conversations in which we're asking and answering questions? All right. So there's actually going to be multiple rooms per question. We wanted to have enough rooms for there to be small discussion groups. So we'd like you to choose one that has less than 4 people in it already as you're, when Leslie opens up the rooms. So that's going to be our maximum group size is 4. So just pick a room that has a number next to it that's less than 4. And each group is going to have an unmoderated discussion for about 20 minutes. And what we want you to do is pick a reporter to summarize your discussion, since we're going to have a little debrief here after we close the rooms. And if you have any trouble in the breakout rooms, just know that there is an ask for help button that will be there for you to use. If you can't see it, you won't be able to see it right now, but when you get into the breakout rooms, you should be able to see it. If you can't, it might be under the More button, which is a triple dot button. So, and Leslie, did you want to mention something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, Randy, that if we find that there's a lone person in one of the rooms, I may reassign you myself. So don't get alarmed if you suddenly get moved and whisked into another room.
There you go. All right. Thanks for mentioning that. So, yeah, I think without further ado, let's open the breakout room so each of you can choose one. So Leslie, please go ahead.
Okay.
Okay.
Are you all are you seeing it on the screen to select a room?
Yes, I see the option to join the breakout rooms. If you are not seeing it yet, there could be a button at the bottom of your Zoom window that brings up a breakout room window and lets you join them. So hopefully people are seeing.
Do you need to stop screen sharing?
Stop.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Yeah. Good point.
All right. So is that, hopefully that's a little better. People can see it.
I'm not seeing anything. I'm seeing you, Randy.
Yeah, so it's possible. Hopefully, people got the message to update your Zoom before the meeting, because you will need a newer version of Zoom than.
I don't think that's it. I'm on the latest version, and I don't see an option.
Well, some
for
people
rooms.
are, because Ruth got into a room, so.
I'm on an iPad and I know it works because 3 days ago I went to breakout rooms on this iPad.
Okay, I'll tell you what. I'm going to close the rooms and just check the settings again, and we'll give it one more whirl. Okay, so give me 1 second here. It'll take actually 12 seconds. You know, Zoom never fails. Zoom never fails to amaze and frustrate me. So. May have wiped out my settings. Okay, let's try it now.
Yes.
Yay. Okay. It erased my settings when we opened the meeting. Go figure.
All right.
Yeah.
So hopefully everyone.
It's a Passover miracle.
I still don't, but that's okay. Y'all have a good conversation.
If somebody doesn't see it, you can chat me in chat. Put a chat in the chat box with what room you want to join, and I will try to assign you.
And if it doesn't work at all, just hang out in the main room and hang out with Randy, and we can have a discussion there.
For our next act, we're going to part the Red Sea. So
exactly, Leslie. Hope the settings are like set up for that part.
If not, we have a Red Sea filter that we'll use instead.
Right.
Exactly.
All right.
I see the rooms, but I don't see how to join one.
You should be able to pick one and join it automatically.
You should just be able to click on it. That's what I did. I just clicked on which room I wanted.
Okay.
Well, it's not working, but I don't have the most recent version of Zoom.
That would be why. So if it's not working, either write in the chat just what room you want to be in, and Leslie will move you, or just hang out, and you can be in the discussion with Randy.
All right.
And I finally see it along the bottom. So if other people aren't seeing it, look along the.
Yes. Yeah, it could be at the bottom of your Zoom window.
Could be under the More button too. You might have to click the More to see breakout
Good
rooms.
point.
That's possible. That's possible.
Yep. Okay. So I see that we've got some rooms populated. That's good. So why don't we get started with the discussion in here? So obviously I reflected on my, what resonates most deeply with me about this, this principle that is repeated often in the Seder. Has anyone noticed this? Has it resonated for other people? And are there other reasons that you want to mention why this is an important lesson and how we can actually apply it to our current political environment, about not rejoicing in the suffering of our enemies. I think that's probably something that's relevant to present day, right? Anyone want to reflect on that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I think that it's really, really important and really complex, and it has created divisions within Braver Angels and real problems, because it tests the limits of the capacity to walk this walk and to define what it means, because the debate has arisen as to whether or not there is a line beyond which we have to condemn other people because they are supporting, for instance, those who, not supporting, but not condemning the people who invaded the Capitol on the 6th. And that's become a huge, huge deal. And I had a very, very powerful discussion with David Blankenhorn about this, where I affirmed my commitment to saying, look, and this is interesting because Alma herself put me in touch with a statement that was made by Neil Young, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, where he said that, as I believe, that we have to have empathy for those people who have been twisted and deprived of information and mesmerized by what has turned them into folks that are just, they don't have their will left. They are like members of a cult who are doing something that it's like soldiers in war. And if we don't have, we can condemn the acts. What they did was horrific. But if we condemn the human beings, that verges precisely into the arena of our rejoicing at the expense of their freedom, of their dignity, of their right to live. Who says that if we are to talk to some people in North Korea and we say, well, how do you feel about the fact that if you oppose the state, you get consigned to a concentration camp and your parents and your kids for the rest of your lives? They say that's the only way we can keep the state alive. Well, the reality is, how can you hate them? How can you despise them? How can you reject them as human beings? You may condemn the reality that they have come to embrace, or the perspective, but we must continue to love them. And that is what the Dalai Lama says. And that's, let me just sing this. Oops, sorry. This is my 2 seconds to sing this line that the Dalai Lama wrote, and I put to music, and it says, love everyone, love all strangers, love even your enemy. Love everyone, and everyone will join you to work for peace. Never give up, no matter the pain. Love everyone, no matter. That's what we have to do. We cannot achieve that. We are not all Dalai Lamas. But this is my thesis, and I think it's a part of the discussion. I'm sorry it took a lot of time doing this, because first time back on the road, you know.
I appreciate it, Peter. What you said sounds like something from Dr. King, who said that there are not evil people, there are evil acts, but good people are capable of doing bad things, and I think that we all have had bad things in our past that we regret, and should we, if we learn and grow and perhaps achieve redemption, should we be forever condemned to be identified with those acts? I'm not so sure about that. So for me, that's a very personal thing. Is there anyone else who would like to offer a thought on this question?
Well, I'd like to offer a much more pointed thought. And that is that oftentimes people talk about, well, we must condemn these individuals. We must strike out because of the evil. What I would suggest that people think about is at what point, when you are unwilling to forgive, when you are rejoicing over the downfall of your enemy, at what point do you become the purveyor of evil? And I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you, Reverend.
Yeah, it's more serious than the absence of stepping up to the plate. It's again complicity. And this is very serious talk. This is sacred space here.
Is there anyone who sees this differently? Well, Leslie, I saw that you had something to add.
Well, I can't say that I really see it differently, but I will say that I struggle with it often. And I'm better at it now than I was maybe pre-Braver Angels, but it's hard sometimes not to take glee in the drowning of your enemies. So I'm a work in progress as far as this one goes.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. I think it's really important for us to share our struggles with others. And if we mention that we're struggling with this, I struggle with it as well. And one of the ways that I kind of connect with how to deal with that struggle, if people have done meditation practices, you know that when your mind drifts, that you take notice of it and you just try again. And I think that that's really applicable here. We take notice that when something happens to someone who we have condemned that leads to their downfall, we may be happy about it, but I think it's incumbent upon us to notice that we are taking joy in their grief and kind of pull ourselves back and say, okay, what does that serve? Right. So, and I think it's also really important, once again, just to share those ideas that we are struggling. Yeah.
It's also the cycle of retribution, and we have it here in America. Right now, we're right in the midst of this horrific trial, and it's one thing to express extraordinary relief if there is if justice is done, but to rejoice because somebody has been killed. This cycle of retribution goes on and on. It's between blacks and whites. It's between Jews and Palestinians. It's horrific. If we don't introduce the entire idea of transcending this, we will never be able to get out of this. And right now, the survival of the world literally depends upon our moving in that direction.
And I see that Rena and Tom have a thought to offer. Please go ahead. Unmute yourself first.
Oh.
There you go.
Okay. I was a little surprised to hear that formation love thy enemy, because what I learned in
we're having a little
religious
trouble with your
school when I wasn't listening.
Try turning off your video.
Stop your video and
love thy neighbor as thyself. And there's a difference. Loving your enemy is a very high. Yep. Can't hear.
Now I think it's a little better. Give it a shot again.
Oh, it's the camera. Stop the camera. Okay. Is that clearer now?
A little bit.
Any better?
So, yes, that's a little better. Go ahead.
What I was going to say is I never heard the formulation love thy enemy in okay, I'll try again.
No, I can hear you.
I don't recall hearing the phrase love thy enemy in Judaism. The formulation that we were taught was love thy neighbor as thyself. Were you able to hear?
Yeah. Yeah,
No
you said the formulation we were taught was love your neighbor as yourself.
All right, why don't you go on to someone else? Apparently the sound isn't working well.
Okay, it's it's a little choppy. Let's see, we had I saw another.
I'll say it once more.
Go ahead.
I never heard in Judaism the phrase "love thy enemy." What I heard was Hillel's phrase "love thy neighbor as thyself," and there's a difference. Loving thy enemy, and I'm that difference.
All right, now I think the sound is an issue again.
Yeah.
Let's go to Amy because I know that you'd like to add something.
And I will just say that in Judaism, I think
somebody has some background noise, so I'm going to mute everybody to start with, and Randy and then Amy, you can unmute yourselves.
Can you hear me?
That's better.
No,
Yeah, it's a little better. Although, are you coming in from a different sound source? Yeah. So I wanted to give Amy a chance. Where is Amy?
I'm here. I don't know
Amy,
if you're
go
talking
ahead.
to me, Amy, or to a different Amy.
Amy, you're
I am
sounding
talking-
good. Go for it.
Go ahead, Amy.
Okay, so I wanted to, first of all, give a little answer. I wasn't able to see who was speaking a moment again and who made that very fine comment about loving our enemy as opposed to loving our neighbor. And there's very opposite and very different teachings that come at the same time, and it's left for us to grapple with the seeming paradox and to realize that the only reason these things even seem paradoxical to us is because we live in this limited three-dimensional world and we're not able to see the way paradoxes come together. But while at the same time, Judaism very much, if we look at our history, if we look at what's written in the Bible, many times we were ordered to erase enemies off the face of the earth, to make sure that all of their seed were gone, that for 7 generations forward, their seed was gone. But the rabbis or the people in the Midrash and the analysis always clarified that even then, it is only because of their evil deeds or because of the terrible reality that they were bringing into the world. That was why they needed to be erased, but we're not supposed to rejoice. We're not supposed to personally be happy at the loss of any life ever, but we do need to do our duty and fight, get up and fight when something is wrong and making wrong into the world. And I don't know if I didn't hear this before for a while. My sound went out. I couldn't hear you all, but specifically in Passover, that might be what this room is about. That specifically in the story of Passover, we have the story of the angels rejoicing when, was this mentioned already in this group? So when,
yes,
that's when my audio went out.
Sure. Yeah, but I think the way that you put it was absolutely beautiful, because it really does say to us that, even though we can't, we shouldn't be rejoicing in the suffering of those who may want to do us harm, it is still righteous to stand up to them and stop that harm from occurring, right? And so I think that's a distinction that's incredibly important, and I think you've put it in a really great way, and it also speaks to the incredible complexity of our world, and that is in and of itself one of the reasons to have abundant forgiveness, because all of us are dealing with this incredible complexity, and we have to make decisions that are hard, and sometimes we make decisions that harm other people, and we don't mean to, but it might be preventing others from being harmed. So yeah, thank you for adding that, Amy. Is there anyone else who has a contribution that you'd like to make? And you can hit your raise hand button at the bottom of your screen if you'd like to get into the conversation next. Leslie?
Just a heads up, we have about 2 minutes left before the people come back out of the breakout rooms. So.
All right, thanks. And Tom and Rena, I'm hoping that your sound issues perhaps have been worked out. Did you want to finish your thought?
We're on a different computer now.
Yeah,
great.
so I just wanted to bring it back to Braver Angels, which is that the challenge is here that we have part of our tradition that tells us to stand up to injustice and to stand up for ourselves. And we're in an organization where we're working to cross bridges and to do conflict resolution and to see people that we disagree with or who say things that we think are really bad or take stands that we think are really bad and try to reach across to them. So I don't think it's easy, and I think it's an internal conflict, and maybe more so as Jews who have very recent memories of really bad things happening. So I just wanted to put that out, that this is sort of a struggle inside of us. Not easy.
Absolutely.
I have a little anecdote that is very powerful. When Peter, Paul, and Mary went to Nicaragua at the time that the United States was mining the seas there, and we had mercenaries killing the campesinos. We were taken on the last day of our trip with a machine gun in the beginning and the end of this train to a little cooperative with about 16 people that had been attacked by the Contra the day before. And I had a child on my head and didn't know until the end that his father had been killed. And at the end of their testimony, and they said, "We're not telling you this because we want to unburden our hearts. We're telling you to go back to America and tell them to stop killing us." And it was Peter, Paul, and Mary, and they took us to a little hill where they had their cemetery, their first cemetery, and they had a cross. And on the cross it said forgiveness. And I wrote in a song that I called Take the Chance, it said, "On a hill there stands a cross above a gravesite, and the single word carved in it says forgive. No war or killing anger can match the force it carries. It can heal the generations so that other ones can live." Our capacity, forgiveness is the sister, the cousin, the brother, the son, the daughter of love. And that's the capacity that we're learning by the empathy and the sense of compassion we have for people when we get to know them and realize that we love them and they're different. So that's Braver Angels right there.
Thank you, Peter. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we all seem to advocate for growth and redemption, but I think that it's really difficult to achieve those things without forgiveness as well. So I really appreciate your comments, Peter. And now that we have the breakout rooms back with us, I would love to hear some commentary from, hopefully you all picked reporters to share some thoughts from your discussions in those rooms. So there's a raise hand button at the bottom of your screen, at the bottom of your Zoom window. And I would love to see some raised hands from some people who are in those rooms who would like to summarize some of the thoughts that came up. So Rita, I see that you were the first with your hand up. So would you like to share now?
And I'm going to ask you to forgive me and blame Donna because I didn't want to do it, but she assigned me. So.
Donna is very good at assigning things.
No, she was very sweet about it. She said y'all would like my Southern accent. So I said, okay, but I don't have an accent, Donna. Okay, but anyway. So anyway, okay, I'm going to try. Y'all are going to help me be succinct here because I have a very difficult time with that. But
okay,
it was a one.
Did we lose sound? Hopefully coming back right now.
Yeah.
That's a little too succinct.
All right, Rita, we've got you back. You can.
Okay.
You can start over.
I want y'all to help me, and it's not personal. Y'all just say, like, you know, what I need to do. Okay. So we had a great conversation. It was Frederick and Deborah and Donna and myself. And Donna talked about Course in Miracles and what she had learned from that. Course in Miracles. I think that's by Marianne Williamson, I believe.
Rita, what was the question that you were discussing?
Oh, we were discussing, I'm sorry, about loving our neighbors. You know, okay. I'm sorry, not being joyful and suffering. I'm sorry.
Gotcha.
I didn't even write. So anyway, so we were looking at that, you know, and how we should view our neighbor or the other. And each of us had something really interesting because Frederick is a unity teacher that has just moved to, you know, he's fairly new to Middle Tennessee. And he was reading a book today, and I'm sorry I don't remember the name of it, but it was so apropos because he read, the chapter he read today was on bondage and slavery that this particular person was talking about. And I'm sure he didn't realize that would be a part of it. But Deborah, what I really loved about what she shared was that she had, you know, her family, she said she recalled her family were sports enthusiasts. And you know how we'll sometimes go, nah, you lost and we won. Well, she didn't like that. And something that she got involved in when she's recently found Buddhism, I guess, and has, you know, kind of uses that for her guide and part of her guide. And she was saying that what she realized was some of the people that on her side, she was recognizing how some of the things that they were doing were hurtful to other people on the other side. And it really bothered. She realized that it was bothering her. You know, it was, I mean, typically people won't think it's a big deal, but when you're divided and it comes from it's one thing if my brother makes fun of me, right? But it's another thing if the guy across the street that doesn't know me makes fun of me. That's a whole different, you know, ball game. So,
and if you could take just 30 seconds more, maybe to wrap up.
It was all about looking inside. I think we all decided that it was looking within ourselves to try to understand what it was that we didn't like about the other, and that it was more about figuring out for ourselves what was the big problem on the inside. So it was a great conversation. I really enjoyed it and got a lot out of it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rita. Definitely looking inward. That's definitely a big part of what we do at Braver Angels. It's always trying to reflect about is there something that we can do better. One last
thing, and this was wonderful because Deborah said it at the end, and I really, really agree. And this is the way I felt forever. When someone suffers, the reality is that we all suffer because they're a part of our world. And whether we realize it or not, you know, if somebody comes in and they're in a grumpy mood, there's a reason that they're in a grumpy mood. And that's not going to make it, you know, it's going to make everybody miserable. So we want to try to find out, well, can we help in some way? You know, what's going on? So I'm sorry, but I think that we all suffer. When one of us suffers, we really do all suffer.
Absolutely. Thank you, Rita. So Terry, I saw that you were the next one with your hand up. What was the question that you were discussing, and what was the essence of your conversation?
We had the same question about not rejoicing at the suffering of one's enemies. We were all people of faith in the group, some Christian, Jewish, and Quaker. So the first thing we talked about is that someone said that this whole theme reminded her of the With Malice Towards None campaign that Braver Angels did after the election, that we have to look at trying to see the good for all of us and not an us versus them. We talked about how injustice will negatively affect not only the victim of the injustice, but the perpetrator of the injustice. Maybe they'll get, like, their bank account will look good, but inside that they're suffering, their soul is suffering. Their souls are hurt. So we talked about how it's normal to feel anger and resentment to perpetrators, but you have to find a way not to harden your heart against them. And that's also part of the Passover story about hardening the heart. That was Pharaoh that hardened his heart. Let me see. That that you can, it's possible to, anyway, some people, we were talking about the Malice Towards None campaign, and some people were saying in their religious communities, some people would not sign on to that because they felt like pledging not to hate someone was the same as enabling their injustice or their abuse. But anyway, we all agreed that that's not the same thing, that you can feel compassion to someone, but at the same time not enable their abuse. And then some of us had very interesting stories. I told one about, I'm a child of a Holocaust survivor. I talked about doing dialogue with children of people who were children of Nazis, and actually getting to meet through that group a couple of former Nazis and get to understand their stories. Someone talked about, a sexual abuser in their family. And so we shared stories of how we were able to kind of find healing and compassion and understanding for those people, while at the same time separating from that, from, enabling or, turning a blind eye to what they did.
Right. Yeah. Thanks so much, Terry. That was definitely a point that came up in our discussion here in the main room as well. The separation between rejoicing in the suffering of one's enemies, but and preventing the harm that you believe your enemies are doing. That's a very different thing. So thank you for mentioning that. The next person I'd like to go to is Tom. What did you discuss in your room, and what was the essence of that discussion?
Thank you. In the Haggadah, it talks about a time when we asked about when we stepped into someone else's shoes and gained a new understanding. Even though I was born and grew up in Cuba and Dominican Republic, it wasn't until I went to Nicaragua with Witness for Peace and was riding along in a truck where the Contras had mined the road, and I experienced fear for the first time. And yet, when we went to these villages, the people, even though they lived in fear, were incredible, gracious hosts that gave us whatever they had to eat. And I realized that they lived in fear all the time. Every day was something that they experienced. And it taught me a great deal about how to sympathize and more empathize with people, and not to assume that I know what their situation is, but really realize that a lot of people live in fear in the United States as well.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. I think that's an amazing statement about the capacity of humanity for goodness, even in the face of our own suffering. Right, we're still able to do amazing good. So thanks so much, Carrie. What was the question that you folks discussed, and what did you say about it?
So our question was the freedom and its cost. And there were a number of just really good comments. The idea that your freedom, the freedom of my fist ends at your nose, was kind of like an organizing concept behind it all. And that in order to get to that state, it's not a free for all. It's not that anyone can do anything. It's that there's a social contract about what you can and can't do that involves a certain amount of sacrifice by everybody in order to have that freedom be able to happen. So a little bit of loss of freedom by everybody leads to the maximum amount of freedom for everybody. And then Abe reminded us of a photo from the 1930s in Germany that was a large crowd all giving the Nazi salute, and one man who was not. He was sitting there with his arms crossed. And, you know, a little bit about what that kind of resistance looks like in our modern context, where you can get in trouble both for speaking and for not speaking. The people are afraid of a Twitter mob, but how does that compare to what that man must have experienced? Which raised the question in my mind, I wonder if anybody has tracked down what became of him. Not that that matters for the importance of what he did. And that also in terms of what's the role of words, you know, if words can be bullets, then, you know, what are bullets? What do bullets do? And at the same time, if somebody punches you or, you know, causes you physical harm, the pain goes away in a relatively short time for many things. I mean, we weren't talking about somebody, you know, having a lifetime disability, but, you know, if somebody can heal from a physical pain, that's one case, but a word or a set of words can sting and last for years. And so, you know, how do you balance those? And Paul had an interesting comment from his work as a therapist of deciding, you know, how much of what you think do you get to say when you're in a therapy session. And you don't. He said you forego that freedom to say what you think when you're the therapist listening to someone, and you hold that space for them without judgment. And if you feel judgment, you take that as that's your problem as the therapist. And he said, you know, lately he's been going a little bit more for the authentic perspective, but with the caveat that it depends on whether or not it's going to harm the client who's listening. So again, there's this tension between, you know, the freedom to throw your fist, so to speak, and the end of your nose. and then last but not least, what I thought just beautiful, a couple of freedoms, and I didn't catch the name of the person. I didn't know everybody ahead of time that was in our group. But this lovely idea of the freedom to say, I don't know. And then also the freedom to change your mind. And that we need all of those things. So all of those as far as costs of freedom.
Thank you so much, Carrie. Those are some really, really beautiful comments. I appreciate you sharing them. And Karen, I see that you're the last hand up. If anybody else would like to share and is having trouble with the hand raise button, you can unmute yourself right after Karen gets a chance to share, and we'll try to let you in. So Karen, please go ahead. What was your question?
So much. Our question was about the 4 children, and there were 3 of us on the call, and I have to say, nobody else, we didn't select anybody in the beginning, and so by the end we were cut off. So I'm going to volunteer to report back our group. We spent probably the majority of the time talking about Braver Angels because one of our members wasn't familiar with Braver Angels. The other 2 of us were. And so you would have loved what we had to say about Braver Angels, the debates, the discussions, the workshops, just everything. What we did talk about with the 4 children was that we identified with all of them to some extent, but if we had to pick out one, it would have been, we don't know what we don't know. And one of us was raised Jewish and did not have that experience. One was raised in a Christian, and another one was raised in no religious factor at all. And one of the common things we found out is that being in the older, not old, but older generations of this group, that we were socially raised where we weren't told to ask questions, and our religion gave us all the answers to things, and how that has changed now in our beliefs of being more open-minded and open-ended in a relationship with a higher power. So pass.
All right. Thank you so much, Karen. Yeah, asking questions is such a core part of what we do at Braver Angels, right? So I'm so glad that you folks got a chance to reflect on that, especially with someone who is new to the organization, who may not have known enough about the organization to ask really pointed questions. But it's great that you had that you were able to guide that person, about what we do. So I'm grateful for that. Anybody else want to speak that did not get a chance and wasn't able to raise your hand? Okay. I think that was a great discussion. I really appreciate the openness there. And so let's see. I am going to turn it
to go ahead, Randy.
Well, I was going to turn it back over to you, Micah. So please go ahead.
Thanks. Yeah, one of the things I've been kind of sneakily taking notes over here at some of the amazing and really wise things that people have shared. And what I would love to do is try to, one of the things that I think Amy was talking about was this sort of where paradoxes meet, and trying to somehow access that point beyond the sort of reality where we see things as either this or that, or this intention with that, but seeing how some of these different questions might be related, and how some of these different points may intersect with one another, and where tensions might lie. And so I wanted to take a moment just to try to lift up some of that essence and some of the intersections between these in a musical way. And then we'll move on to more traditional programming like Dayenu. But I wanted to take a moment here. So I just kind of selected some things that really stuck out to me, and I will try to lift them up musically here for a moment. All right, here we go. So I wanted to start with the freedom to say, I don't know. I thought that was amazing. What an incredible concept if we're talking about the intersection of these things. So the freedom to say, I don't know, 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 I don't know. All right, here we go. Let's try this. I don't know, 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 I don't know. The freedom to say, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. The freedom to say, I don't know, I don't know. I loved this idea of this call to let us not harden our hearts. I thought that was important as well. So let's I don't know, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. The freedom to say, I don't know, harden our hearts. I don't know, let us know, I don't know. The freedom to say, I don't know, harden our hearts. I don't know, let us know, I don't know. The freedom to say, I don't know, harden our hearts. I love what Peter was saying about forgiveness is the sister of love. Forgiveness is the sister of love. Harden our hearts. The sister of love. The sister of love. Forgiveness is the sister of love. Harden our hearts. The sister of love. The sister. And I love what Reverend Ruff was saying. At what point do we become the evil that we condemn? I think that's tremendously important. The sister of love. Forgiveness is the sister of love. The sister of love. The sister of love. Forgiveness is the sister of love. The sister of love. The sister of love. Forgiveness is the sister of love. The sister of love. expression of the contradiction, of the paradox, of the questioning, and where they might all meet.
At what point do we become the evil we condemn?
That was a little something.
Wow! Unbelievable masterclass.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, everyone, really, for it doesn't work unless people actually share really profound things that are worth really lifting up in a way. And so I'm just grateful to everybody for that. I'd love to move to a more traditional thing that you may have actually experienced at one of your Seders before, which is Dayenu, which is very important. And Dayenu really is about gratitude. Dayenu literally means it would have been enough for us. And it's just listing all of these amazing things that we have been given, and in sequence, it's like God, took us out of Egypt, and then God gave the Torah, and then God brought us to the promised land, and God did this, and God did that, and God did all these things. But the really radical idea there is that any one of those things would have been enough, like expressing this gratitude for, even if we don't have everything that we want, or everything that we would like, or even everything that we've come to assume is ours, being grateful for what we do have, and for the gifts that we've been given. So I'll do a couple of the Hebrew verses, and of course feel free to sing along for whatever parts you know, and particularly the Dayenu is very important. But please unmute, because otherwise the delay will drive us all insane. But please sing out in your homes. And then what I would love actually is for folks to write in the chat what they are grateful for. And I will try to bring that into Dayenu as well. So here we go. Ilu hotzianu mi Mitzrayim Dayenu. Dayenu, 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 Dayenu. If I only had vaccines, then I would be so very grateful. They would be enough for me. Dayenu. Dayenu, 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 Dayenu. I am grateful to be a part of Braver Angels, 'cause I can't ask questions. It would be enough for me. Dayenu, 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 Dayenu. If I had this wonderful community, it would be so enough for me, because we can... Why is this important? Because we also get some answers. Dayenu, 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 Dayenu. I am grateful for Randy Leos, because then we have our Seder. Thank you, Randy. Thank you, Randy. Dayenu. Dayenu, 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 Dayenu. I am just thankful for the willingness of others to listen. Thank you for listening with interest. Dayenu, 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 Dayenu. Thank you all for sharing your gratitude. Yes. So I would love to move to a part of the Seder, a culinary part of the Seder, perhaps the most culinarily refined part of the Seder, the Hillel sandwich. And the Hillel sandwich is very important. It was mentioned by a number of folks earlier on and was also my grandfather's, one of his highlights of the Seder. It involves taking some matzah and taking some maror and also charoset if you're not really one for the bitterness and want to sweeten it a little bit, and putting them together in a sandwich. So I'm going to do that right now. And anyone who is cooking along at home, now's a good time to do that as well. I see Randy has his matzah. Here we go. Yum. And, whoa. The idea here, again, is that we're really embodying literally the bitterness of slavery, and also seeing how it can come together a little bit with some of the sweetness of the charoset within, of course, the matzah. So here we go. Here's a little sandwich, and I'm not going to read the entire. Here we go. Here's a little bit of it. I'm not going to read the entire portion that in the Hebrew, but the most important bit was at the very end, as my grandfather would emphasize, is the veyochlu hu, which means, and then he ate it. So may we all both be able to embody and sort of make space for bitterness, but also to temper it with the sweetness always. So veyochluhu. That tastes like Pesach. Wow. I'd like to turn things over to Tom for our second glass of wine. Can't believe it's been so long and we've still been on one glass. I don't know who planned that. It certainly wasn't me. I was definitely involved in the planning. Go ahead, Tom.
Thank you. I want to share how the Seder influenced my understanding of the Christian holy meal, what we call the Eucharist or Lord's Supper. And I'm so thankful for this ecumenical sharing. On a personal note, my first encounter with the Seder was as a young priest in a conversation with Rabbi Abraham Heschel. And it was he who encouraged me to look at the early forms of our Christian liturgy. And so I did. And over the years, I've shared this meal with every congregation that I've been the rector of, and trying to share our Jewish roots. Let me begin by saying that Jesus, at the very heart of the Christian faith, was Jewish. And so it makes sense that many of the traditions of the early Christian church are rooted in Judaism. If you hear the words bread, wine, lamb, redemption, sacrifice, blood, freedom in the Christian lectionary, you can be sure it came from Judaism. The lamb that is mentioned in the Seder is later identified by Christians as Jesus, the Lamb of God, sacrificed for the world. Every Sunday, Christians gather and mention the sacrifice Jesus made so that we may be free from sin, which is an archery term and simply means being off the mark of what God wants us to be. Even the hand washing that the rabbi or the father in the home does during the Seder is carried over. In the Christian tradition, the priest washes his hands before celebrating the Eucharist, which means thanksgiving. So on the night Jesus was betrayed, he was celebrating, if not the Passover, certainly something akin to the Seder meal, which celebrated the escape from Egypt. So it is no accident that Jesus used unleavened bread and wine in the Eucharist. In the early versions of the Sabbath meal, the question is asked, is there any reason why we should not give thanks? The Eucharist follows the same outline of the question. And giving thanks to the God of creation is found many times in our liturgy, just as it is in the Seder. At the center of the Seder is the blessing of bread and wine, symbols of life itself. They are blessings of God, expressions of thanksgiving. Blessed be God, King of the universe, who brings forth bread from the earth. And the prayer over the cup in which God is blessed as creator, sustainer, and redeemer is like it. Similarly, in the Christian liturgy, prayers are said over the bread and the wine. In the Seder, children want to know, what are we doing here? What is this? As I understand it, the Seder's purpose is to remember and relate the story of redemption, of salvation, of freedom. And in the Christian tradition, the Eucharist is also to remember, but not just to remember, but to relive the experience that calls us to love others, seeking the other person's highest good, all children of God. So thank you for the opportunity to share my Jewish liturgy ancestry with you. So now may we toast the second glass of wine. May this cup of wine be a symbol of remembrance that we are all free sons and daughters of God.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei pri hagafen. Thank you so much. And that brings us about right on time here to my favorite part of the Seder, and what I would say is sort of the grand finale of sorts. In a normal Seder that has 4 glasses of wine and goes on for 4 hours, and we have a long meal, and by the end people are really feeling a little perhaps liberated. And so in my family we have a tradition to sing Khad Gadya, which is the last song here, which involves really all of these different animals and elements and what they do to each other. And we would all make a noise of that animal or of that character as we go through the song. And it's easily a highlight for me. And so I put my foot down as we were deciding which parts of the Seder would be highlighted here, that this had to be part of our Seder if I was going to be involved. And specifically, it resonated for me not just because I like it, but because actually within Braver Angels leadership, we have a tradition of spirit animals. And each member of the Braver Angels leadership, if you come to enough meetings, at a certain point, somebody gives you a spirit animal. And so we actually are going to be doing our own version of Khad Gadya here. And each of the leaders, as we call upon their spirit animal, will then make the noise or do the movement that embodies that animal. And so here we go. This is going to be for posterity, and everyone is like, oh no, we're live streaming this. This is horrifying. It's going to be great. Okay. So the chorus for everyone who doesn't know is just Khad Gadya, Khad Gadya. Okay? So, and everyone, of course, feel free to chime in on the chorus in your homes. And for those of you who have spirit animals, if you're afraid that you won't remember to unmute, just unmute now. And if we sing Khad Gadya with a delay, it's all right. We're all, at this point, supposed to be drunk anyway, so it's all good. So here we go. We'll start with Khad Gadya, Khad Gadya. Then came the mot and ate the tiger, Siberian tiger. This is a metaphysical world where some things don't make sense. Khad Gadya, Khad Gadya. Then came the guinea pig that nuzzled the mot that ate the Siberian tiger. Khad Gadya, Khad Gadya.
Nice tiger, Randy.
That is very excellent. Then came the Yoshi that stomped on the guinea pig that nuzzled the mot that ate the Siberian tiger. Whoa! Peter's coming in strong. Khad Gadya, Khad Gadya. Then came the iguana That rode on the Yoshi. That nuzzled the guinea pig.
Weep, weep.
That
This is pretty pathetic.
wait a minute. Oh, that nuzzled the mot-mot.
Bok, bok.
That ate the Siberian tiger. Khad Gadya, Khad Gadya. Then came the dog.
Ruff.
Excellent. With authority. That barked at the iguana. That rode on the Yoshi. That nuzzled the guinea pig.
Weep, weep.
That stomped on the mot-mot.
Oh,
That ate the Siberian tiger.
Great.
Amazing. Khad Gadya, Khad Gadya. Then came the Bengal tiger. Woo! That growled at the dog.
Ruff.
That barked at the iguana. That rode on the Yoshi. Yahoo! That stomped on the guinea pig.
thought you nuzzled. Weep, weep.
I've been confused. That nuzzled the mot-mot.
Bok.
That ate the Siberian tiger. Khad Gadya, Khad Gadya. And the grand finale here, I kid you not, this is one of the actual spirit animals here. Then came the coronavirus. That infected the tiger. That growled at the dog.
Ruff.
That barked at the iguana. That rode on the Yoshi. That stomped on the guinea pig. I'm sorry. That nuzzled the mot-mot.
Bok, bok.
That ate the Siberian tiger. Khad Gadya, Khad Gadya.
Dayenu.
Woo! We made it. We made it. I want to throw things over to Ruth, who is going to describe a little bit of the after party that we
Okay,
have.
don't go anywhere, because actually officially the Seder is not over until we not only search for and find the Afikoman that we hid way back when we split the middle matzah, but also when we eat it, because the Afikoman, in addition to having some symbolic value, makes for a really tasty dessert, especially when it's gluten-free like mine is. It's so much better than regular matzah, trust me. All right, so here's what we're going to do. All of us who are still here, just stay tuned, because I'm going to pass this matzah to one secret person. And then, is there a way we can go on gallery view right now? Let's see, am I the only one not on gallery view? Okay, there we're on gallery view.
Well, we can all control and put ourselves on gallery view.
Yeah, you'll probably want to be on gallery view for this. All right. So I'm going to pass it to one person here. Then we're going to just do a round robin. Introduce yourself. Say hi. Chag Sameach is the word for happy holidays in Hebrew. And a guess. Everybody gets to guess one person to see if that person has the matzah. The winner will be the recipient of a donation made in your name by me in the amount of $57.82. Does anybody want to know why? Why?
Was that the year you were born?
Yeah, way back 5,782 years ago. Sometimes I feel like it. That's the way I'll feel tomorrow after I wake up after drinking 4 glasses of wine. No, 5782, that is the Jewish year. That's the Jewish lunar year. So it's like, 2021 only, 5782. All right. Talk amongst yourselves, and I am going to pass the Afikoman to one lucky person. I should mention that not only will the donation be made in the name of the person who finds it, but also in the name of the person with whom I am hiding it. So here we go. Let's see who's going to be the special keeper of the matzah right now.
Ruth, how do we know that? How will we know that you've passed it to us, or how?
You should check your chat box.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you.
All right.
You should check your carrier pigeon intake loft.
I wish there were like a little emoji matzah that I could send you via chat. Okay, so the matzah has been sent, and I hope. Let me just check. Hold on a second. I'm just going to make sure the person is actually here and hasn't tuned out, because that would be really counterproductive. Hold on. Let's see.
You can't chat them if they've left the call.
Oh, yeah. And then, okay. All right. All righty. Well, we'll give this a shot. I'm going to call on Micah first. Micah.
Hi. What am I supposed to say?
You're supposed to guess. You're supposed to guess one person amongst us who might be hiding the Afikoman.
Oh my goodness! I'm gonna guess Reverend Ruff.
All right, Reverend Ruff, are you the person with the Afikoman?
I am not.
No, go ahead. You're next then.
I'm gonna guess Paul.
I am Paul. I do not have it. I am going to guess Jack Dennison.
Paul, you are psychic.
Oh,
I tell you.
wow. Paul.
Oh my goodness.
Paul is an excellent therapist.
Are you guys in collusion?
He's a therapist. He saw it on my face. He saw it on my face. Yeah.
Well, congratulations, Paul. Congratulations, Jack. And happy Passover, happy Easter, everybody. Now let's just all do the symbolic a little bit of the Afikoman, the last thing we traditionally eat today until tomorrow morning. So I'll just say Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei pri adama.
Man.
Hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Which is the word.
Man. Both, yeah. Thank you, everybody. Passing it back to Randy just for a quick goodbye. And we actually, unlike every Seder I've ever been to, actually ended on time.
Yes, well, if I make this quick. Yeah,
fair enough. I may have spoken too soon.
I want to thank everybody for joining. I want to thank the amazing team of people that we had to help out. So Ruth and Stan and Micah, who obviously stepped up to MC this and has been so instrumental to all of this. Leslie, who has run the breakout rooms, and Dan, who was tech support behind the scenes, and there's just so many people who have come together to make this possible. So I am so grateful, and because this is a really important tradition to me, and I want to give a quick shout out to the Orthodox community, who one of the members of that community actually reached out to me, and I just wanted to mention the exchange because I thought it was important. So as you may know, they were unable to join us because of the Sabbath, and I was definitely frustrated by this scheduling challenge. But I had an email exchange with someone about the issue that had a big impact on me, and I wanted to mention it, since his approach was really in the spirit of the holiday. And so he expressed his disappointment that he couldn't join, but also that the voices of his community might be left out, especially in an event that focused on the Jewish tradition and that focused also on giving voice to the voiceless, as Leslie so eloquently expressed. And his community also often sees things differently from many other American Jews. So I offered a sincere apology to him. his response was wonderful. He said, it actually brought me to tears when I got it. He said there was no need for an apology because he understood my true intent. And not only did he not offer me personal criticism for that exclusion, but he offered a gesture of friendship. We happen to live in the same town, so he suggested that he would love to get together and say hello. And he's been vaxxed up, so we could actually do that. And to me, it reinforces so strongly, no matter what our differences might be, politically, religiously, anything else, that I value his voice being represented here because we share the most fundamental core values as human beings. And because I couldn't imagine anything more in the spirit of Passover than his gesture of friendship to me. So I really thank him for that gesture. And I thank all of you for coming to join us here and share in this celebration. And yeah, thank you all so much. And I really look forward to seeing you at future events. So
thank you, Randy, for bringing us all together.
Thank you, Randy. Thank everyone for being here.
Absolutely.
Thank you, everybody.
May I ask a question?
Go for it. We can say goodbye, and then for folks who would like to stay, feel free to stay, chat, etc. Thank you all so much. Go ahead, Rita.
I wanted to ask, I had a Protestant preacher that one time shared something with me about what he had learned about the Jewish faith. And I don't know if I recall it correctly, but he was sharing with me, my husband and myself, that the unleavened bread, the reason that they left the salt out of the unleavened bread was something to do with the salt was symbolic of sin, and that it would be swept up and thrown out, or it was something to that effect. Does that sound at all familiar?
I don't know.
Maybe he was using his own symbolism, but he had, you know, he had actually studied some Hebrew and stuff, but he said something about the reason that the unleavened bread was used was because of to leave the salt out, which was sin, and that I guess in the household they would sweep up.
Well,
I think that's.
I'm not. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Tom.
I will shut you down.
I was going to say, I think that's probably reading a little bit into it. My understanding is that the reason why there was unleavened bread is that they didn't have time to pack. They had to get out of there quickly.
Yeah,
right.
That's definitely what
that's what we were
taught.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. But the salt,
actually,
there is different.
There are two things even in the Khad Gadya that talk about the bread. It's both, and I can get the citation in the Bible. First, it says, this is the bread of affliction, lechem oni, that our ancestors ate in Egypt, suggesting that it was not just leaving in a hurry. The one interpretation is that when you're a slave, your time isn't your own anyway, so you can't make a delicious bread that rises. Anyway, so both within the Khad Gadya, it's the bread of affliction, and it's also the bread with no time to rise.
That's interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. And there, as with every ritual in Judaism, there are 1,000,001 interpretations of it, and usually by
to death.
well, exactly. So let's we'll add some more. Why not? Just again wanted to thank everybody. I think we can. I
have to issue a quick correction. I'm so sorry to interrupt.
Go for it, Ruth.
Yes. One of our participants actually called me out on my 5782. It's actually 5781 until Rosh Hashanah. So I looked it up. Speaking of different interpretations, I looked it up once and it was 5781. Then I looked it up. Anyway, it's 5781, but I'll throw in that extra cent for good measure.
For good luck. Exactly.
Exactly. It's a good year to skip a lot of anyway.
Well, for the pandemic being over by that year.
Hey, there you go.
And the Hebrew year comes earlier than the Gregorian year. So then for a worldwide pandemic to end a few months earlier, that's a better thing.
Dayenu.
All right.
Dayenu. Anyway, thank you all. Thank you all so much for coming. I think we're going to officially sort of end the event now, but if anyone wants to hang, feel free. But everyone should also feel free to go without being rude. So thank you all so much. Chag Sameach.
Chag
Sameach.
Before
Thank
I
you for
say
putting this together, Randy. It's greatly
Yeah.
appreciated.
beautiful.
Terrific, Randy. Thanks.
I want to thank the Silicon Valley Braver Angels with Ruth and Dan, and I was with them earlier today, and they invited me to this, or invited all of us, and so I'm thrilled that I was able to attend, and it was a cultural feast. We really enjoyed it so much. Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Thank you,
Rita.
Rita.
Good night. Twice today.
Thanks.
Bye.
Right.
Micah?
And Micah, I just want to say that your talents prove that there is definitely a God in heaven.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Franklin, thank you.
And it looks like
that means a
are those your
tremendous
parents,
amount.
Micah?
Thank you. They are indeed.
So my parents are here as well. I would like to express my gratitude for that. So that's awesome.
Yeah, that's great.
Grateful
to be here.
Absolutely.
Could you explain more about what made it possible for you to improvise with yourself doing all those parts?
So I have a looper right here off screen that is very helpful, particularly when one can only sing with oneself. Then I set it up in a way that I can basically sing something and then just sort of loop it and add layers. So, in lieu of being able, in a normal world where we would all actually be together, I would have improvised that and then given each of those parts to like part of the group to sing. But since I can't actually do that, I got a looper.
It was wonderful. I'm sure you know, but it was wonderful.
And hopefully the album will be out soon.
Exactly. dropping when you least expect it, like Beyonce.
Well, I have enjoyed it, my friends. But of course, the biggest day of the Christian year happens in a few hours, and we have sunrise service. So,
oh my goodness, Reverend, thank you so much for being with us in this time.
I don't have the joy of being in sunny California right now. So I thank you once again.
Thank you for being with us.
And
thank you.
I will see you all again.
Looking forward to it. Thank you, Reverend, and happy Easter.
Okay.
So many people of so many different faiths, and it was great to bring everybody together tonight. It was super. We really enjoyed it.
Thank you, Randy.
Absolutely.
Well done, everybody. Thank you for letting us join.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you for supplying Micah with to us.
Amazing.
To the world.
Yeah.
It was crazy in trying to refresh my memory, to make sure I didn't get any of the interpretations wrong. I just ran into a cascade of so many different interpretations, as we were just saying.
Right.
And, it felt like, as I mentioned to Leslie and you, Micah and Randy, like a cacophony, talk about like not knowing, just admitting, okay, I really don't know, because there's so many different versions here and they're all fascinating. I think it almost is a kind of reminiscent of a Talmudic tradition, right? Where, you throw out one interpretation and then somebody disagrees, and throw out another one and somebody else disagrees. And so it's fascinating, and it makes us all think a little harder, a little broader. Peter, I just want to, say thank you as well for the music, beautiful music. Just
thank you
very,
so much,
very
Peter.
moving, very moving.
Yeah.
It was to me, so special because, I've had to be so secluded in this time period, taking this chemo stuff, and I just loved being a part of this tonight. I loved being with all of you. It was such an affirmation. I feel very fortunate, really, really. And Eric, what a joy to see you, my brother. Yeah. And, yeah.
Peter, thank you so much. Thank you.
Oh,
Thank
good luck,
you.
Peter. Good luck with your chemo and.
Oh, I'm gonna lick this mother. I'm telling you.
I've heard it here first, folks.
There's an enemy you're allowed to hate.
Randy,
Yes.
Thank you. Randy, you were superb.
Truth.
Moving, powerful. Oh, yeah. So wonderful. Mikey, you're the best.
Carry everybody.
Thanks, Peter.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
everybody.
Randy, you want me to?
Everybody.
You want me to close now?
I think we should, or
Let's
else
do
we're
it.
no one's
Okay.
going to go away.
This is the song that never ends. Chag Sameach, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Okay, good night. That was great. It was
Kol
great.
hakavod.
Wonderful.